everybody. Welcome to the DePINed Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. I am thrilled today to have Sylvan with me, the founder of Parasail. And Parasail is a staking platform that allows DePIN projects to and DePIN communities to stake their tokens in a very effective, efficient way. So welcome, Sylvan.
Hey, hello everybody.
Listen, I gave a quick intro here, but can you maybe give a minute on Parasail and I'd love to hear about it in your words.
Yeah, for sure. So Parasail is a staking infrastructure for DePIN, and then basically what we do is we provide the tools, we provide the codes for DePIN projects to build a provider collateral system or like a staking feature for their network, so that they can manage their providers and hold them accountable more in a more effective way. We also build like delegation features where DePIN projects can involve their token holders, not just their providers, to participate in securing the network as a whole. So this is for us, we feel like it's a way for DePIN projects to align their ecosystem and make sure that everyone is participating in something altogether.
Terrific. Well, listen, I know that you guys right now work with Fluence, which is terrific, and you started off with Filecoin. Can you give a little bit of description based on those experiences? First, let's back up. How do you define DePIN as a definition, and then talk about kind of the value proposition and kind of why it's so important to these communities, the service you offer?
Yeah, for sure. So DePIN, I mean, as the name suggests, a decentralized physical infrastructure network. For us, we feel that the most important thing for DePIN is that DePIN are networks that use crypto incentives, use blockchain technologies to coordinate resources, physical hardwares, and then use that to provide um, like utilities and generalized services to people who need that type of services. And then because of the power of decentralization, it actually is more robust. It could be better performing, and then has like strong cost advantage over its like centralized counterparts. So for us, any networks that adopts some type of concept like this, or has elements of that is a DePIN to us. So that actually applies to many type of networks, right? You have CPU networks, you have GPU networks, you have data storage networks, CDN networks, all kinds of, and even like sensoring in the world of Internet of Things. And our role when we're trying to work with DePIN projects is to help them build a staking feature. And you might be asking, why does a hardware network require staking, right? Isn't the proof of work already enough for a DePIN project? And our thinking was like this, right? When DePIN networks want to gain more adoption, which means that they are actually selling such services to real paying demand, to real paying clients, they actually need to deliver, or they have to deliver, a very a high quality of service, a very strong service standard to their end clients, so that they can compete and acquire users over from their centralized counterpart. But if they want to do that, they actually need to hold all their providers, like the people who are providing the GPUs, the CPUs, the storage, the compute, all these type of services and utility. They need to hold all these providers accountable. But because of the decentralized nature of all these like DePIN networks, it's very hard to do so, right? It's like some adopt a permissionless participation mechanism. So like as founders of the protocol, you might not even know like who are the people that's like actually providing services on your network. And then it's like very hard for you to actually manage these resources and hold all these providers accountable. So that's why we think that staking could be something that's simple but also like very powerful, because by DePIN staking, we're actually referring to a type of provider collateral mechanism that is directly tied to their performance, tied to their SLAs to these networks. so that they get rewarded when they are doing well, and they get slash or get economic punishment when they are breaching the SLA. So we think that having like a deeping staking feature or like a provider collateral system is a very simple but also very useful way for deeping networks to align and then hold their providers accountable. So this is generally how like we see deeping project, where we think their biggest challenges are when they're trying to scale and get real adoption. And that's like also the type of solution that we're proposing to help them better manage their providers.
Listen, that at Fluence, we sort of grasp and agree with all of that, but I'll take it even a step further, which is that staking is fundamental to providing security for a digital resource network, right? So if you think of DePIN as digital side and physical side being cameras, antennas, etc., that's a different security model, which is probably less necessary for staking, although staking is still relevant. But on the digital side, which is what we're talking about, right? You mentioned storage, compute, CDNs, etc. Staking is kind of the necessary component to provide trust. So that we agree fully, and I don't think anyone's figured out a better model than staking. So that makes sense. And then once you get to staking, how that staking is designed matters, because a lot of early generation projects, I would say, required the providers to be the one staking. And doing that was problematic in two ways. One, it raised cost for providers, right? So providers then have to provide the equipment, the service, and then also the capital for the coins. And so that, which is not their core model. And so that is kind of one issue that you solve, because by providing staking services, you then separate the service of the provider and their infrastructure with the capital requirement from the people who provide capital and want to return that capital, which is in form of tokens. So that to me is an incredibly valuable service. And then if you make it liquid by creating a pool, you're then making that capital even lower cost, presumably, which is even more attractive. At Fluence, we solve that by sort of skipping that part and allowing anyone to stake right away. So it's not, the stake isn't necessary. It doesn't have to come from the provider. The stake can come from anybody in the community, which we felt was very kind of relevant to lowering costs for providers and making the providers freeing the providers to focus just on the infrastructure and their service. So that, to me, we sort of got there. But the one thing we didn't do was create the ability for smaller amounts of capital to stake. And that is what I think is so interesting about the Parasail staking pools and staking solutions, is that you aggregate anyone of any size that wants to stake. And so what you effectively do is you open staking up to the entire community. So if you think about it, you've gone from a situation where in the Filecoin network, only the providers had the ability to stake, to now anybody can stake. And so you actually open this up in participation to the whole community, which is, to me, a fundamental benefit of DePIN, is the community involvement, both in terms of the hardware provisioning potentially, but also in terms of the capital provisioning and allocation. And that, as a staking service, to me, is a big democratization component and a huge benefit to the ecosystem. And so, thrilled that you guys are providing this service, because I think it's a very kind of fundamental to how DePIN makes it most effective, lower cost, and it increases the ability to scale in all those ways. So I think that is interesting. And then I'm curious, with that backdrop, there must be other DePIN projects that you are probably working with that are going to take advantage of this kind of setup.
Yeah, for sure. So we are actually working with like many DePIN projects, and then we even extend like our product offering like much further by actually providing the infrastructures and open frameworks for DePIN projects who do not yet have a staking feature to set up something for themselves. So basically, we actually built a open framework. We call it like the Parasail DePIN staking stack. It's an open framework. We plan to fully open source this so anyone can use. That helps any DePIN projects to easily deploy a staking feature for their providers. And it can be deployed on like any chains. And we also have validators and operator services if they do want to conduct any type of SLA checks. That is a indicator for whether they want to reward or slash any providers. So we think of that as one of the most important offering that we are providing to the entire DePIN ecosystem. And then because like we do think that staking is so necessary, right? It's like very, very necessary. It's a must for any DePIN project that actually want to gain actual adoption and gain like real paying users and paying demand, right? So that's like one thing that we're shipping out hopefully in Q1 2025. We are very fortunate to already work with some of the like top DePIN projects in the ecosystem, and then they're our design partners. They're going to be like early adopters of our staking stack. And then we also will do whatever we could, right, to help them build that feature for their ecosystem. And then on top of that, right, you talk about like how we work with Filecoin, also Fluence, and basically what we're trying to build is to um, make the staking process easier, right? So for Filecoin, as you said, it's only for provider. And I mean, I also like fully understand the rationale, right? Which is like, hey, you are providing the services, you should be the one that's being held accountable and then providing money to secure your service. I totally get that, but as you said, it does cause this kind of a capital burden when a provider wants to scale its operations, and when the network wants to scale itself, right? It is actually more efficient to create a delegation type of staking where like anyone in this ecosystem, any token holder can participate in securing this network regardless of whether they are a provider or not, right? So I think you said that community is very important for decentralized network. People, it's like the community succeed as a whole, right? So in that sense, it is makes a lot of sense and also creates lots of interest alignment within this community when you open like democratize the access for staking to the entire community. And then we are actually like rolling out a few more DePIN projects in the months of December and also like early in January, February of next year. But I mean, we're still in the final testing phase, so unfortunately we cannot really disclose those names. But we'll announce them as soon as we made the um, integration, and then we are able to launch the product, right? So but all these projects, they either have like this type of collateral provider collateral system where they require the providers themselves to put up stakes, right? So they kind of face the same or similar challenges of Filecoin, which is like when providers want to scale their operations quickly, they face this capital burden, right? So our goal is also to create this delegation mechanism where more of their token holders can participate in a more freely and permissionless way, right? So that's most of the projects that we are working with and integrating for the next few months. So we're very exciting for that.
Well, listen, that's terrific. I'm thrilled to hear about those announcements when they happen, and I think it's just a benefit to the whole ecosystem, which is super interesting. Um, let's back up for a second, reset, talk about Sylvan. How did you get involved? What's your background? What led you to found Parasail?
Yeah, so actually my background was in data analytics, building data products, and also a little bit of finance. I started my career or my crypto journey in the Filecoin ecosystem. I founded a company that's like doing um, blockchain data extraction, archival, storage management, and also like blockchain indexing and analytics, and also dashboard building for the Filecoin um, um, community. The reason why there's such demand is because Filecoin is one of the earliest DePIN project. It was like actually um, uh, Filecoin was there before the word DePIN was coined, right? And for Filecoin, when their network is launched, and then people just realize that it actually generates much more data than like a general purpose blockchain, right? Because it carries the token information, it carries like smart contract or application level information, but it also carries lots of service level information. And for Filecoin as a storage network, right, service level information is actually something that's very important to them. They need to make sure that they hold all their providers accountable. They're performing at a very high level. So that's kind of like the prerequisite for Filecoin before they can even go to any like go to market or business development with like real clients and sell their storage solutions. Right? So that's why I was there to build lots of dashboards to track all the metrics, especially on the service level, like whether they're like what is the uptime for all the storage providers, right? What is the data missing rate, right, for all these like storage providers, and something about like deal making, something about like data storage pipeline. So those are actually very useful information for people to understand how the Filecoin network works, and then how the interaction between storage providers and storage clients, and how I started thinking about like Parasail is actually taking some inspiration from the Filecoin network, because I think Filecoin is one of the first DP network that actually requires providers to put up stakes, to put up collateral. But of course, for Filecoin, they kind of merge it with their like native blockchain consensus, so it's a bit more complicated than just asking for like provider collateral. But that was one of the early experiments of holding providers accountable, right? So which because I had the first hand information about all this provider information, I just found out it's actually Filecoin provider is like one of the most consistent, like most reliable like providers among all DePIN ecosystem, right? Of course, we know that all these DePIN ecosystem kind of bootstrap their network by issuing token incentives, and of course their provider participation is kind of tied to their token performance. But on a day-to-day basis, right, you don't want to say, hey, today my token goes up 20% and therefore I have 20% more providers, and tomorrow it goes down by 20% and then suddenly 20% of my providers are gone, right? You want a more consistent, you want a more reliable like provider base, so that you can sell your service to real clients and generate real revenue, right? So that's why I was like really inspired by their tokenomics and mechanism design. So I was thinking, hey, in the future, because I'm very bullish about DePIN, I think DePIN is a great way for crypto or for distributed networks to generate like revenues beyond just like Web3 users. But I do think that staking could be a great way to solve the reliability and consistency issue, and that's how I was started to work on Parasail.
Super interesting. I mean, that is quite the extensive of journey. And I guess I would say that, you know, you're lucky in that, or we're fortunate that you got involved with Filecoin, which, as you said, was DePIN before DePIN existed. And so your insight into arguably the core DePIN project, that also for which staking was a requirement, was a big, gave you great insight into it. That is certainly interesting. And I think, listen, the other point about it is we've all learned from Filecoin, right? Everyone in this space, I think Helium being another kind of core one, but that's different from a staking perspective. But from a token economics perspective, I think there's people have looked closely at Filecoin and copied some core elements of it, and also evolved some other elements of it. As I mentioned, in terms of stake, and also Filecoin made it, as you mentioned, more complex with a more complex architecture, given as you mentioned, the data kind of encapsulated in the network and the staking, that made it more of a kind of complete solution versus just the staking to enable hardware, which is kind of a more kind of current model, if you will, which is more the way the Fluence network has gone. Super interesting. Thinking about this for a second. The other, if you think about the evolution of crypto, we L1s were super big and important, and DeFi quickly became important. And staking is something that people hear staking, they automatically think DeFi, right? And you're thinking staking, APY, farming, right? And yet in DeFi, it's an entirely different proposition, right? It's about providing liquidity. It's not about providing security, or at least in general. There's obviously some exceptions, but maybe it's worth. And I just sort of realized we should probably back up and differentiate for people that have sort of the DeFi mindset, staking in DeFi, and compare that to staking in DePIN, and kind of how those two ecosystems look at it differently, and how it's enabled differently.
Maybe like for whoever is like watching this and still got confused about why DP needs staking, I would like to clarify a bit, because like staking is, it has its own meaning, right? It's coming from like proof of stake, and then you have like staking as like a an activity where people can do when they are on like proof of stake chains. Of course, then later on you have governance staking, right, or DAO staking, and that's kind of more of a different types of staking that people have been being very creative about. But when we like generally when we talk about staking, we go back to like proof of stake, right? Most of these blockchain layer ones today adopt some type of proof of stake. So which means that they are using staking as a way to maintain their consensus, to maintain their the security of their network, right? But like if we are actually like looking at like DePIN networks, I might be wrong, but I would argue that for DePIN, the most important thing about them is actually the service that it provides, right? It's like, because we do see this like very often, like you have DePIN projects that actually launch their tokens on a major layer ones, but they have a separate chains of themselves to handle all the services, handle all the service logs, service level information, and then handle all these provider management, right? So to some extent, I think what defines the value of a DePIN project is actually the service that it delivers, and effectively deliver to its paying clients. So in that sense, it's a bit different from just like consensus security. But I think it's more like, if we want to coin a word for this, it's probably like more of a service security, right? So if you think about like the Airbnb model or like the Uber model, right? So they have all types of ways to manage their providers, to manage their hosts or drivers, but they probably still need them to put up some deposit, right? Because in that case, that's like a way for them to hold all these providers accountable, make sure that they're not malicious, right? Make sure they're adhering to the code of conduct of that particular platform, so that these platforms are super valuable because they can deliver high quality of service, high standard of services to their paying users, right? And I think that the same logic applies to DePIN, where if you have a simple SLA based or performance based provider collateral mechanism, it actually makes sure that all these providers are incentive aligned with the network and with the protocol, and there are like economic consequences when they're not adhering to their code of conduct or to their service levels, right? So in that case, we call this staking is just because it looks like, hey, I'm just putting my money into a like a box, right, into a smart contract, and it automatically generates some type of emission for me. From a user's perspective, or from like a UX perspective, it's highly similar to staking, but these two are actually, inherently different from each other. So one is for blockchain consensus, one is for like service delivery or service security.
Well, listen, that I get, but that's also different than DeFi, right? That's different than the DeFi staking, which is about earning rewards for providing liquidity. I put the L1 proof of stake staking as somewhat akin to DePIN because the staking there is providing a service, right? So it's enabling. It's providing security. It's enabling and securing that network. That's different than staking in DeFi, right? And so explain, because that I think that is I think the more important distinction, because staking in proof of stake and DePIN both provide security. The networks do different things, fine, but staking there still provides security. There's still consequences for being a bad actor. Like the architecture is the purpose is the same, and this sort of broader architecture is trying to do similar things in similar ways. DeFi, different, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for DeFi, I think a lot of that is just, like token incentives, right? When you are, contributing TVL, you're contributing liquidity, and then some projects will emit some type of new token for you as like a reward, right? I would say that's more similar to like a participation incentives, and then that generally has like no cap for this, right? So you can have, 1 billion TVL or 10 billion TVL, and then I mean, would just be like new points, new like tokens being minted to reward all this participation. But I guess for DePIN, it's very, very specific to the services that the network is providing, right? It's very, very specific to, hey, how many like providers are actually in this network? How many hardwares are actually being connected and being actively providing services? What is the service value that's the entire network is currently providing? And all those factors are actually, variables that goes into like the calculation of how much stake is actually required, right? So in that sense, I think of like the staking for DePIN is more, utility or like a service related thing. It's more so it's like, this is how much I need, right? But for some like DeFi projects, it's like it can go to like infinity, right? So to some extent, I think that might be like the key difference between these two.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's interesting. And I would go a step further, which is that in DePIN, your rewards can be tied. If I would argue, if the network is architected correctly, then the reward value is tied to the network use. And so, with regard to Fluence, there your reward is either calibrated in influence tokens, but it's calibrated based on a dollar value. So your reward is $10 per core per month, and that's split between providers and stakers, right? So stakers maybe get 20% of that, which is, I think, very interesting. But then, to the extent those providers are serving real customers, that revenue is then split between the staker and the actual hardware provider. So at maturity, you're not receiving your reward based on some perpetual inflation, which is unlikely unsustainable, but rather you are just receiving a share of the network revenue in return for providing the services of securing that network. And that, to me, is a sustainable, logical, rational foundation for a reward system to work and to scale over time. And I'd argue that's different than other staking models, where it is about this token reward system, as you mentioned, that almost inevitably will run out. It's just sort of a question of when and at what time, and kind of, is there a way to replace it or not? And again, not every DePIN network operates exactly the way Fluence does, but I think that is a general concept of staking rewards coming from use is generally the way I think that mechanism is sort of architected one way or another, directly or somewhat indirectly, for a lot of these DePIN projects. I think at least that's my understanding of it. Is that yours as well?
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's like for DePIN, I think the tokenomics should serve like should be like should be there to serve revenue generation, right? So in my mental model, I think the best DePIN is the DePIN that actually does not need to issue block rewards, right? It's like all the revenues are sustaining all the providers, I mean, they're making money, and then for whatever, asset backers or like, stakers who are there to provide, economic guarantee for all these services, they also earn their share. But everything essentially is being derived from real revenue being generated and being like, brought into this network. The token is just there to facilitate everything, to make it like, smooth, right? To make sure, hey, this is like a one-sided market, right? When there's a demand, you don't need to do this matchmaking. You can just like plug into this network, and then automatically it's some type of service are being delivered, right? So that's kind of like what I think the most ideal DePIN tokenomics would look like, right? But for DeFi, the tokenomics might look like very, very different, right? So you talk about like perpetual inflations, participation incentives. A lot of that is more so, to create this type of scale in terms of assets, in terms of liquidity. But then at the end of the day, it doesn't really address the problem of, hey, who's going to consume all this liquidity, right? Who's going to actually pay for this?
Definitely. Well, let's thinking about DePIN overall. Um, is there a potential that you show this model as so relevant and important that projects build this in-house? Like, as an example, Fluence, as part of our architecture, allows anyone to stake, which sort of, or sorry, allows non-providers to stake, right? So that's already an evolution away from the Filecoin model, and the Filecoin model requires a parasail, I think, in order to be most capital efficient. Fluence went one step further in terms of allowing anyone to stake. The next step is also creating pools so any size can stake. And so we didn't go through that effort, and we also, it's not our core business to manage the liquidity and the liquid staking. My guess is there is going to always be a model. Like every single DePIN digital project probably needs a liquid staking pool, and so you should probably have a pool for every single digital project. Do you think that's the future, or do projects start to build some of this in-house?
Yeah, I mean, so our goal is to actually offer people options, right? So if you are the Filecoin model, then, I mean, starting from the DePIN project that doesn't even have a staking feature, then we give you the infrastructure, give you the tooling for you to build something for your network, right? For provider collateral model like Filecoin, then we build this like delegation feature for a delegated staking feature like Fluence, then we build like liquid staking pool. And then if some projects that decide to do everything themselves and build everything just like in-house, I'm pretty sure that there's also something that we can support, right? So it might be like cross-chain interoperability, like cross-chain liquidity, like cross-chain swaps. So it's like so like our overall goal is to do two things, right? First is to promote the concept of DePIN staking, and then make sure that every DePIN project and all the Web3 users, and especially the DePIN users, are aware that, hey, having this feature, having this staking feature for DePIN is a very strong like mechanism to significantly increase the consistency of services. So that's like one thing that we really, really want to do. We want to make sure that all these like DePIN projects deliver high quality of services at a very, very consistent level. Right? So that's the only way that DePIN is going to be really successful, and then to really gain like mass adoption. And the second thing that we want to do is to actually help like bringing all DePIN projects together, right? So first we start by bringing everyone within like one DePIN ecosystem together. You have the provider, you have the DePIN project, you have the stakers, you have token holders and users. We try to bring all of them together, right? But then you also have different DePIN projects that could have synergies with each other, right? So let's say if I want to build an application fully on like DePIN infrastructure, then I do need CPUs, I do need GPUs, I do need CDNs, I do need storage. And then what is the incentive for all these like DePIN ecosystem to work together, right? So that's kind of the second thing that we do want to address. We do want to, like with our effort, bring more DePIN projects and their ecosystems and their users together, right? So to create this like a more like unified like DePIN ecosystem, and then our goal there might just be help our partners grow their users, help our partners bridge their tokens to like other ecosystem, right? Help them build like staking stack, help them build like a delegation pool or whatever, integrate with like DeFi infrastructures. So that's kind of like our roadmap and also like our vision, and how we work with like DePIN projects.
And help me understand, from when a project says we need liquid staking, let's go, to when it's deployed. What obviously it's going to depend a bit on the architecture, but help people understand, for the founders listening to this, how long this build takes,
Well, I mean, usually based on
and what the and what the economics are.
you mean economics of like how it impacts like tokenomics?
We'll know how you guys charge.
Ah, I see, I see. Yeah, so like for from like our perspective, like I think there are two value adds here, right? So one is that we help founders save time and save like dev costs, right? So generally, based on like feedbacks from our DePIN partners, it takes anywhere from like at least 3 to 6 months to build a like a staking feature for their network, and then to be like very customized to their design. It could get longer if it's like a bigger protocol, or if it's like a protocol that has already been launched and then want to add an additional like a staking feature. So that's actually I think that's like pretty significant time and also pretty significant dev cost that might be involved. And but what we try to provide is to generalize the staking infrastructures so that any DePIN projects can use um, our open stack to create like or to build like DePIN like staking function or features for their network within, let's say, 2 weeks, right, or 1 week, right? I hope that's a big cost advantage and a big value proposition, and also it's free. The only paying use case is when you actually need like operators, or you need like validators to validate the SLAs. Then you actually need to pay to the operators. But that's kind of I mean, those not operators are not Parasail. We're just there to try to facilitate. And then on top of that, we do also help curate delegation pools. We do like go to market to your ecosystem and try to get more users and more stakers involved to collectively secure your services. And then for that, we do charge like a 10% like protocol fees on all the rewards that's being collected. I think that's kind of like an industry standard for all like pool like or liquid staking like protocol. And that is for the continuous support and continuous development of the protocol, to ensure that we are also highly incentive aligned with all this like DePIN ecosystem that we work with. But in general, like what we try to do is like we want to make sure that staking as a feature is as accessible to DePIN project as possible. So that's why we want to fully open source the framework, the DePIN staking stack that we're building. And then on top of that, I think managing liquidity, trying to do go to market, that's probably some services or value add services that we could provide, and then we do charge a bit of protocol fees for that.
Super interesting. Well, then, how do people find you? How do they find Parasail? How do they find the projects that you have staking pools built already for people that want to get involved in these various communities?
Yeah, so I mean, go to our website, parasail.network. There is a form where you can just leave your contact information, and then we will contact you to understand your needs, understand how we can help. You can also DM us on like Twitter, follow us on Twitter or X. It's just like Parasail Network. And also we do have like like various community channels. We have our Discord, we have our Telegram chat. All of our team members are in this community channel, so feel free to reach out to us at any time.
Excellent. Well, listen, Sylvan, thanks so much for being on. Thanks for building a really important piece of the DePIN infrastructure, which I think is going to help us overall, the industry, certainly helping Fluence scale. For those interested, there's a Parasail FLT pool, which is active and which is, very active and is staked to multiple hardware providers. And so that's been a big success for us. And so we're thrilled to be working with Parasail, and it's been a great experience. So thank you for your help with Fluence, and really appreciate what you've done there and what I think you're building for a number of other projects. So look forward to having you back on with a number of other projects under your belt that we can kind of really talk about in detail and compare across different models. But thanks again, Sylvan, and we'll check in with you in a couple of months.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.